Welcome back to Indianapolis, courtesy of Whiting Clinic LASIK and Eye Care. This is 9 to noon at the Combine. Paul Charchian, Paul Allen's PA in charge, feasting now with Minnesota Vikings General Manager Rick Spielman. Good morning, Mr. Spielman.
How you doing today?
We have a microphone down. Good morning, Mr. Spielman.
There we go.
Better?
That's
Good
better.
to see you. How is Combine 2018 for you?
It's been very busy so far. Talking to a lot of our own players, agents right now.
Yeah.
Had a lot of some committee meetings that I'm on. So, and today's first day, the interviews at night, and today's first day, we get to see the guys work out.
Yeah.
Which I'm anxious to get back to. Just send a hint.
Yeah.
What are you saying? We got to cut this short? Come on, you made your way all the way
It was
over
poorly
here.
timing because the kicker started it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if the kickers could have been, not that you need a kicker, but, I mean, the kicker started it, then they
Well,
went into offensive lineman, right?
We do need a kicker, right? I think isn't
we don't
Kai
have
a
any
free
under
agent?
contract
right?
right
You have
now.
not. You're right. You have nobody under
Right.
contract. So
Does it, I mean, you've done this for so long and at such a high level. Does it ever become ever overwhelming at the Combine, having your people with whom you need to deal, free agency looming, and this is really all about the draft? So there's so much going on right now.
We have so much that we have to get through this week while we're down here, and like we've done in the past, we always have a process in place and a system in place on, okay, you guys are handling this part, you guys are handling this part, you coaches are doing this, trainers are doing this, psychologists are doing this. So it's pretty organized, and it's a vital part of how we put our final game plan together and how we're going to get our roster better. So, no, I can't wait for this time of year, and especially to get down here at Indy.
So from here we go on to not only free agency but pro days, right? I mean, pro days I would imagine are around the corner.
Yeah, in fact, we get back Monday night and Tuesday morning because free agency last year, remember, butted up right against the Combine.
right.
Yeah.
This year it's on the 14th, so we'll get
Couple
back.
of weeks.
We get a couple of weeks break, and then Tuesday morning we're heading on a flight to Alabama. Me and myself and I.
Yeah, that's a good team.
Yeah.
It's a good trio. Got us 13 wins in the regular season last year.
And then Coach M himself and I.
Excellent.
And then George Edwards himself and I, too.
Yeah. So with
Suddenly
the
9 guys going to
Yeah,
Alabama.
yeah. We've got a private jet
Right.
of I.
Are you saying there's players to watch at Alabama?
No, we just thought we'd get out of the office
Right.
a little bit.
Yeah.
No one's excited to
Enjoy
get into
Birmingham.
Yeah.
you mentioned the importance of working with the representation for your players and just everything in front of you now. But you also, what is the importance of the private sit-downs you get with the players at the Combine? When Coach Zimmer joined us yesterday, we talked about the Combine drills and just the potential of some things being antiquated, some things being a little outdated at the Combine, specifically with the drills. Do you see it that way?
Yeah, but I also know the NFL Combine and Jeff Foster does an outstanding job here. And every year they're trying to get it more related to what they're doing on the football field. Now, down to Senior Bowl, we can't put them in pads and go one-on-one situations here.
Yeah.
But there are specific things I think the coaches are starting to contribute on what they want to see. Because when you go out to all these pro days, we don't run the same drills. There's some other drills that we do run. Yeah. And our coaches have specific drills that they want to run as well, just to see some of the traits that they're looking for.
Speaking of the Senior Bowl, it was right after the NFC title game. And, I know how much you hate to lose, and we also all know how it ended, which, losing's one thing. The way it ended was kind of a shocker. Was it difficult emotionally to segue immediately into the Senior Bowl after the NFC title game?
We got back about 3 in the morning, and at 6:30 I was in Coach Zim's office. We were going through the game, and then we were getting ready to interview all our players on Monday morning.
Yeah.
And actually I ended up staying back. We had everybody else, George Payton, and our entire staff down there. But because we were going through the offensive coordinator search, we got on that right away. So I stayed back and aided Coach Zim in that search.
Yeah.
Pro days have changed a lot, it seems like, in the 8 or 9 years since we've been doing this. It seems like then you didn't talk as much. We didn't hear as much about pro days. It seems like players are now really orienting themselves to putting on the best pro day they can, and the importance of the pro day seems to have changed.
Well, I think it's also the school is, because a lot of these pro days are now on national TV.
Yeah.
So it's an opportunity for the
Platform.
colleges to say, hey, look at us, at What school did you go to?
Pasadena City College for 5 years.
I keep forgetting.
Yeah, Anthony Miller and Charles Mincy were there. You may remember those names.
Well, yeah, when I go out to Pasadena City College this year.
And their pro day.
At their pro day when ESPN and NFL Network is out there, they do an unbelievable job on putting that platform up for that.
There used to be a time when it seemed like offensive line was one of the easier spots to peg. And not that any of it's ever easy per se, but it seemed like the first rounders tended to perform more like first rounders. I think it seems like that's changed the last 5 or 6 years, where the failure rate at all across offensive line seems higher to me. A, do you think I'm just flat out wrong? And B, if you think there is some truth to this, that offensive line has been a little harder to peg, do you think there's a reason for that?
I think a little bit because of the evolution of where our game's going, and because I think there's been some injuries up there. And the biggest thing, I think, is the CBA. And in the past, the coaches would have time to develop these young guys.
Yeah.
And now the time constraints are so restricted, and especially at that position where probably when they're coming out of college, you're in a 2-point every snap, and they're pass blocking. And maybe they're run blocking from a 2-point. A lot of times, first time a guy ever put his hand on the ground and try to block somebody. But we don't have the time during the off season because of the limitations of the CBA to take time to develop those guys.
So the spread,
and a lot of times those guys may not hit it, till 3, 4, year 5. Where before, when it was a little bit old school coming out of college, they were used to the NFL game because it was very similar. But now it's changed a lot, and the time that we can develop players has changed as well.
So do you think the proliferation of the spread offense in college football is a contributing factor to that? Because so oftentimes these spread offense guys, they don't have a hand in the ground.
But I think you're seeing some of that in the NFL now, where some of the college stuff where you're seeing a lot more spread type formations and a lot of RPOs or run pass options. And so some of that is being implemented into the NFL because that's the skill set that we're getting, especially at the quarterback position. There's not a lot of drop back 6-7 throwers anymore.
Yeah.
A lot of these guys are athletic, and that's what they've probably played since the high school. So you're still going to have your systems in place. You still got to be able to run the ball. You still got to be able to play good defense. But coaches and teams are evolving a little bit, especially to the quarterback and what he does best.
While we're talking offensive line, can we hit on some of the offensive line players that you've got now on roster? Give me just a quick evaluation. Let's start with Riley Reeve, who I thought it seemed like he had a very good season at left tackle. How did you feel about his year?
Yeah, no, we were very excited about all 5 of those guys up front. We revamped that whole offensive line. I think when Pat Shermer came in and we had a meeting with our scouts, and as we went through our planning process last year, we're going to do a little bit more outside zone, so they have to be a little bit more athletic. You're going to have to get up to the second level, and you have to be able to block those linebackers, and the linebackers are athletic nowadays.
Yeah.
Our screen game has not been very good, and then when Pat came in and we adjusted what we were looking for in the offensive line to match up with the system, all of a sudden we became a pretty good screen team last year. So I think a lot of those things are all contributing factors, but that's an example of how the front office, the personnel staff, and the coaches all have to be in sync on the type of traits we're looking for. And if you're trying to do things that this guy is just a power straight line guy and we're going to blow everybody off the ball, and we start doing those other things, well, he's not able to do that, so why do you do that?
Right, doesn't have the footwork or the speed or whatever to execute that.
It's like you. Why would you go out and execute as a receiver, which you probably don't have the skill set? But if I signed you to go
why
out,
would you work on fantasy hockey when you're so good at football?
Clearly a pure passing quarterback.
Oh, no doubt. At Pasadena City College.
Arm, obviously.
So why put yourself in that situation?
Exactly. Yes.
That's an extreme example, but
right.
Do we have a definitive word on Joe Berger and his status for next year?
I talked to Joe Berger, and I think that'll clear itself up here. I know we have a meeting with his agent, so we'll have to know. Probably a decision here is
pretty
a
soon,
lot of decisions we're going to have to make here over the next couple of weeks.
Remmers played guard in the postseason. Not going to pigeonhole him into guard next season, but Rashad Hills' progress at right tackle. What did you think of that?
Well, he came in. He's only been here not even a year and a half yet. So we picked him up, I think, the last 4 weeks off Jacksonville's practice squad last year. And then he got a full off season with us and then played and ended up starting a lot of games when we had to shuffle the line. So we're very excited about the trend he's going. But that goes back to the point, as we're sitting here evaluating the offensive linemen here, one of the things that is appealing when you're trying to evaluate the offensive line is, can they play multiple positions? Because that's a big factor in our game now.
Yeah.
So can guards go into centers? Can centers go to guards? Can tackles slide into guards if they had to? And a lot of the guys that we have on our roster right now are multi-position players. You know, Pat Elfline was a guard his junior year, a center his senior year.
Yeah.
Nick Easton was a center
Yep.
that moved over to guard. Joe Berger has played guard and center.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
those are the things as we go through our evaluation process in free agency or the draft, it really gives them an extra added value if they can do multiple positions.
Guessing and or speculating on the starting quarterback for the Vikings in 2018 is exhausting for us. Does it in any
He's
way?
sitting next to you, to your right.
Okay, well,
He just said he was a pocket passing quarterback.
Yep.
That's right.
Well, we might
Wizard.
need to find that 0-16 Lions year.
But then I can
start
take
doing the comps.
Why is that?
With
We
all
go-
due respect.
It will go in 16. I'll draft JD in the first round, and adios. I'm in retirement. Taking 50%
Final
of that
move.
contract.
Does the process with the guys who were on the team last year and people who could be available in free agency and or the draft, does it any way give you anxiety?
None. Because I think we are so prepared and would go through the process so thorough. And I can't tell you the amount of hours we spent on this position.
Yeah.
And I know once number one box was to get the offensive coordinator hired.
Yeah.
And once we got the offensive coordinator hired, we started right in. His first weekend, we spent probably 8 hours on Saturday, another 5 hours on Sunday, and started evaluating our guys,
Yep.
potential guys that could be out there in free agency. We'll get started on the draft process now. But he's also, you know, we got to put in additions to what our offensive system is too. So our coaches basically in the morning are spending everything on schematic improvements and what they're going to do from a scheme standpoint. And then in the afternoons, we spend the time on personnel.
So does the next guy match what DiFilippo wants to do, or do you get the next guy and DiFilippo works it around him?
I think it's a combination of both. DiFilippo and Kevin Stefanski to understand what we're looking for in that quarterback, what his capabilities have to be, but also if this guy is the best player, what can you do from a schematic standpoint to make sure that he has the best chance of success? And that's a good example of that is last year and what Pat Shurmur did with Sam Bradford, and then all of a sudden how we adjusted our offense to what Case Keenum does.
So there's more to it than, okay, we have these obvious free agents and these guys in the draft, and, hey, Sam's really good, but we have the knee. Teddy's really good, too, and we found him and won a division, but we have inactivity. We just won 13 with Case. I mean, there's more to it than
14
that, right?
actually, and 14 and 4, but that's fine.
Yeah, no, 14 total, but Case won 13, Sam
Case,
got
right,
one,
right.
with
Okay.
all due respect. But so there's more to it than that, right?
I respect your due.
You do.
We can't leave this interview without touching on the quarterback situation. You've
Are
got to
you kidding?
figure out.
You know what? Let me tell you a quick funny story.
Okay.
Something great.
I've spoken to the media, and I've had a couple other talks that I have to give, and I have to give another one this afternoon.
Yeah.
And this morning I went to Mass at 6:30, and we had 13 priests in there. So I was thinking, when I got, thank God I can just get away from the quarterback thing.
I know.
And we went through all Mass.
Yeah.
And sure enough, when I went to get a cup of coffee, one of the priests came up, what are you going to do at quarterback? I was like, God, I almost made it.
Was there any form of theological epiphany that led you to the 2018 quarterback?
I went to confession.
Okay. You might need to.
Oh, there are so many ways to go with that, but I'm just going to leave it right there.
Bless
with
me,
Rick.
Father. I've sinned.
Yep.
And please find me a quarterback that can stay healthy.
In
consistently.
2011, Father, for this I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Rick Spielman, General Manager, Minnesota Vikings, 9 to noon.
All right, so given that you're not
We're not breaking?
You're not going
I
to
guess-
divulge
No.
anything meaningful
No, we
right
still
now.
have
and you
45
can't.
minutes.
Just how about this? Let's just frame it up this way. Do you know what you're going to do on March 12th, 13th, and 14th? Is the plan pretty much settled at this point?
We will know what
know-
we're going to do by March 12th, 13th, and 14th. I
Oh,
can
yeah.
tell you
By
that.
then, you will be ready.
Yeah, the
Yes.
chat
Yes.
period, right?
Yes, we have a chat period,
Yep.
but it's been very productive with talking to all three of our quarterbacks. I have another agent I have to speak to about another one of our quarterbacks is coming up Sunday.
Yeah.
But I think once we get back and gather up, we can start finalizing our game plan going forward.
Yeah, and agents obviously play a big role in that, and those are discussions you can have with your players' agents now.
Only,
right.
Yes.
You can't talk to any other quarterbacks' agents, including just hypothetically a quarterback on another roster that happens to be in the capital city is one.
The
only time you can start talking to them is when that negotiating period begins.
March 12th.
I mean, to each person's taste, it's different. For me, the most intriguing part, or a major intriguing part of all of this, for me, is Sam Bradford. I mean, in the 2016 season, despite some offensive line problems and running game problems, which you fixed, I thought Sam was fantastic, and he was obviously fantastic in the New Orleans game. Then we had the knee. The knee situation seemed to be weird with the way it developed. I mean, how do you analyze that with Sam?
All we can do from to make the best decision possible is when you get into the medical areas, is you just got to rely on what your doctors and your trainers are telling you.
Yeah.
Because I'm not a doctor, I'm not a trainer. That's what those guys get paid to do. And, they give us their opinion. We have second and third opinions out there. And then just like I have 2 or 3, 4 opinions on these college kids coming in, sometimes 6 opinions on guys.
Yeah.
And you gather all that information and you just go and make the best decision.
Right.
I believe your coach used the word degenerative in relationship to the knee. That can mean a lot of different things. I mean, technically my knee's degenerating right now. I mean,
is
and
my
you can
life.
still play.
I know, and I still got it. There's that. Is there? You're the team that knows more about his knee than any other team right now.
Right.
What can you tell listeners about the status of a degenerative knee?
A degenerative knee can be on a scale of 1 to 10.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, if you look at every NFL player, they probably have degenerative knees, probably degenerative backs.
Yeah.
If you look at all these college kids, if you played enough football in your life, you probably have some degenerative joints in your body.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a fact of life. So it can be a wide variety. It's a very broad stroked term that our coach used last year.
From what you know about the draft at this stage, Rick, do you think from a 3 technique standpoint, that defensive tackle spot, is it good? Is it deep? Is it like top heavy or what?
Well, just like we talked about the offensive line earlier, we're looking at a lot of defensive ends that can slide inside and play, maybe be third down inside nickel rushers. Right now, that's a big area of a need for us as well. We only have currently 2 guys under contract, Linville Joseph and Jalil Johnson.
Yeah.
So I know we're going to have to address that area.
Yeah.
You also have to factor in, some of the extensions that we're probably going to have to start working on this summer.
Yeah.
So that's the whole piece of this, too, is you just can't go out there and play fantasy football. No.
Hey.
He's been doing it for a month. My life is degenerating.
He's kind of made a living out of it.
I kind of have.
God.
Yes. So it's working fine for me.
Yeah, it doesn't work on this end.
Yeah.
No,
well, with free agency, whether it's one person or a bunch of people, that's the balancing act, right? What you do now, what you do next year, and what you have down the road.
2 things I'll make a point on. We've started cap planning for this 2 years ago.
I'm sure.
And we're actually cap planned out to 2020 right now, understanding who's potentially coming up, what the costs are going to be. So when we go into this year, regardless of who the quarterback is, there's a specific budget we have in place that also should not, or hopefully not, affect our ability to keep our core guys as well.
Last 2 for the GM.
Last year's trade deadline saw an unprecedented flurry of trades, something that the NFL normally doesn't get a lot of. Do you think that that's a one-time aberration, or do you think teams are starting to loosen up on trading around the NFL in a way that we haven't seen in the past?
And I can't speak for the other teams because we weren't involved, but I also think that has a lot to do with your cap room, and you're seeing as the cap grows and you're seeing how much room some of these teams have, and you're seeing the room they have now. So when you have that much cap room, you have the flexibility maybe to do a little more trading than you have in the past, but I think that's very dependent on what kind of cap room you do have.
Is it a deep quarterbacks draft, or is it top heavy?
I think, everybody's going to know the top quarterbacks. But I think, through the middle rounds, just what I've seen so far, and my favorite thing to do is to go out to college games besides going to the Nebraska game.
Of course.
Is go out and see these college quarterbacks live, because that's where you get a true picture of truly where they are. And I got a chance to see most of these guys at least play once. And that because you're not only evaluating what they're doing on the field, but you can see how they interact with their coaches on the sideline. You can see how they interact with their teammates. And it's amazing just being at that game live, what that tells you about that player. And plus, when they come in and we interview them, I'm going to ask them, well, hey, you threw your damn helmet here. Why did you do that? I mean, is that what a leader does?
Right.
Tough question. of which you
I'm
probably got an
asking
answer
you.
for. Yeah.
All these guys have answers right now.
Almost every year I have this same conversation with you at the Combine. My philosophy.
Are we going to keep it going, or can we skip it?
No, we're going to keep it going.
It might be good.
Because your answers have changed over the years. My feeling is you should always be drafting a young quarterback, always have a young quarterback in the system who you think you can mature into a potential starter.
Right.
Always. And 5-6 years ago when you answered that, you weren't necessarily as on board with that plan as I have been. The last couple of years you've actually acknowledged that I might be right about something about working that plan.
Probably not, but I don't. Maybe it was an accident. Did I start doing what you actually
and
said?
And we do have
Exactly.
Kyle Sloter.
We have Kyle Sloter. But we haven't drafted a quarterback in, I think since Teddy. I don't think we've drafted one. So where does that balance work in between wanting to have a young quarterback that you can mature into a potential starter someday, and then, we don't seem to draft one?
It depends on the depth of the draft. And each year is different, just like every year the positions are all different.
Yeah.
So if there's a quarterback you like, maybe there wasn't a quarterback we liked after the top last year or the year before.
Yeah.
But we always are looking. That's why we went out and was very aggressive to get Kyle Sloter, too. But also, when you look at our depth of our quarterback last year, we were pretty deep.
We were deep.
I mean, where's another drafter? Zim was, what's the best way to put it? Very annoyed that we were carrying 4 quarterbacks. And I says, well, Zim, they keep falling out of the tree left and right. I can't just go out and finding quarterbacks. So we've been making sure, as annoyed as he can be sometimes,
that's great,
that the importance is to have enough depth at that position.
So to keep 4, you obviously like Kyle Sloter a lot, or you're not keeping 4. That almost
I think
never
the biggest
happens.
thing is you see what happens, especially second half of the year when some teams are starting to fade and probably don't have an opportunity to get in the playoffs. Then they're working the waiver wire. They're smart too. And I knew when we signed him how many teams were in a sweepstakes to get him, and we were able to persuade him and his agent to bring him to Minnesota. So in my mind, even though in a coach's mind, well, I can have another extra this or extra that.
Yeah.
If I let this guy go, and I know I have 0 quarterbacks under contract going into next year, at least can I have 1?
Yeah.
Because I have to look at what's going out into the future as well. The coaches are what do we got to do this week to win? But my job, my vision has to be not only what we have to do this week, but what are we going to look like a year from now or 2 years from now? And that's why we do all of our cap planning and everything else as part of our process.
Eden Prairie's Todd Downing is on the offensive coaching staff. Obviously, offensive coordinator for the Raiders for a year, quarterbacks coach all over the NFL. What's Todd's role with the offense?
I prefer to have Coach Zim and DiFilippo, which they're not talking to until we get to the OTAs going forward.
That's great.
Except Zim will address you guys at the But I think what they have done in DiFilippo's past, and they're still identifying what the roles and responsibilities are.
Yeah.
But they always had a guy that worked a week ahead. Like we do the advanced scouting on the personnel side and personnel groupings, just so when the coaches come in on Monday after we get through our film, they start game planning. But there's a week prep before that, where I think by having an additional coach, whoever that coach is, he's going to start working on some other things from a football and a coaching side to give us a jump going forward. And I won't get into any details on what those special projects may be.
Mm-hmm. Casual fans know that you stopped Kevin Stefanski from interviewing with another team. That suggests that you must like him a lot and that he's an important asset, but most listeners don't really know what he does and what he brings to the table necessarily. Can you help us understand why he was a valued asset that you didn't want to leave the building?
I think the whole process is just like when you want to put the best team together that you possibly can. And, Kevin's under contract, and, he was a major part of the coordinator decision.
Yeah.
But when you can put together a staff, just like you're trying to put together a team of a lot of great minds that have, and add DiFilippo in with Tony Sperano, with Kevin Stefanski, with all our other coaches, Kenny Palomulu and Daryl Hazel and Clancy Barone, it gives you even a better chance, I think, to win, because you have to have personnel to win in this league. There's no question about it. But also I think you can get an advantage here or there with the type of coaching your staff. And Coach Zim has put together a very, very strong staff.
We completely understand all that. However, I mean, again, with all due respect, blocking Wabi from going to the Bears Entertainment Network, that might have been taking it a step too far. I mean, it's just something I had to get out there.
He's got a family, a big family.
I'm Bulldog reporter guy, and I had to bring it up publicly.
Who blocked him? I didn't know that.
Might have been Ann Deppner, but she put it on you. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
See ya.
Rick.
Rick Spielman, General Manager, Minnesota Vikings. Back to the Combine after this.